The sun hung low over the cracked asphalt of Route 17, casting long shadows that stretched like desperate fingers across the dusty shoulder. There, by a rickety folding table scavenged from who knows where, stood a girl no older than 10, her faded sundress clinging to her thin frame like a second skin baked by the relentless heat. Plastic cups of lemonade, murky yellow from too much sun and not enough sugar, sat untouched beside a hand-scrawled sign, "Lemonade 50C, help mom's meds." Her dark hair was tangled, her cheeks streaked with dirt and the faint traces of tears long dried. Cars whipped by in a blur of speed and indifference, their drivers too buried in their own worlds to notice the small figure waving a limp hand, her eyes wide with a mix of hope and quiet defeat. It was the kind of scene that twisted the gut, a child's innocence clashing against the harsh indifference of the world, whispering of hardships no one so young should bear. Miles ahead, the thunder of engines cut through the afternoon haze like a promise breaking free. Ethan, Ghost Harlan, rode at the front of the pack, his weathered leather jacket scarred from years of road and regret. At 42, he was a man forged in the fires of forgotten wars and broken oaths, his face a map of lines etched by loss. The wife who'd slipped away in the night, the brother lost to a desert skirmish he'd never speak of. The Iron Vipers, 30 strong, rumbled behind him in a tight formation. Their bikes a symphony of growling Harleys and custom choppers, chrome gleaming under the dying light. They were en route to a rally up north, a ritual of brotherhood to shake off the dust of their solitary lives. Ethan gripped the handlebars tighter, the vibration humming through his calloused hands, carrying him away from the ghosts that haunted his quiet hours. But as they crested a rise, something caught his eye. A flash of movement on the roadside, small and solitary. He slowed first, instinct pulling at him like an old tether. The convoy followed, a ripple of brakes and downshifted gears echoing across the empty stretch. There she was again, that girl, waving not at the passing traffic but at them, her arm rising with a desperation that pierced the roar of their machines. Ethan's heart clenched. It was the same hollow look he'd seen in the eyes of kids back in the war zones, the ones left behind when the world moved on. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the distant hum of the highway. The others pulled up beside him, a wall of leather and steel, their faces a mix of curiosity and wariness. "What's the play, Ghost?" rumbled Jax. His second in command, a burly veteran with tattoos snaking up his arms like vines of forgotten battles. Ethan dismounted, boots crunching on gravel as he approached the table. Up close, the scene hit harder. The lemonade was warm and flat, the cups chipped, and beside them sat a battered jar with a few crumpled bills, pennies and dimes barely enough for a meal. The girl's name was Lily, she said in a voice barely above the wind, her mother sick back in a trailer park off the old county road. "She needs medicine," Lily whispered, eyes downcast, fiddling with the hem of her dress. "The doctors say it's bad, but we don't have." Her words trailed off, but the weight of them hung in the air, heavy as the dust settling around them. Ethan knelt to her level, the scent of hot tar and wild sage filling his nostrils, and for a moment he saw his own daughter in her face, the one he'd lost to illness years ago, a promise unkept that still burned in his chest. In that instant, something shifted. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out a worn silver chain, a dog tag from his service days engraved with a vow, to protect the innocent, no matter the cost. He'd carried it since the war, a relic of a pact made with his fallen brother, swear to stand for those who couldn't. The girl's wave hadn't just been a plea, it was a call, echoing that ancient oath he'd buried under miles of blacktop. "We're not leaving you out here alone," he said, his voice steady as the horizon. Lily's eyes widened, a spark of trust flickering to life. He turned to his crew, the Vipers watching with the quiet intensity of men who'd faced down worse than a roadside standoff. "Brothers," Ethan called, the word carrying the weight of blood and choice. This ride just changed course. The convoy didn't hesitate. Engines roared back to life, but this time with purpose, a unified growl that shook the ground. They formed a protective circle around the table, Jax and the others dismounting to help pack up the meager stand. Cups, sign, jar of coins, loading it onto a spare saddlebag with gentle hands. Lily climbed onto the back of Ethan's bike, her small arms wrapping around his waist, the chain of his dog tag glinting in the fading sun. As they pulled away, the highway blurred into a ribbon of redemption, the girls waved now a beacon that had turned 30 hardened souls toward a fight worth riding for. But Ethan knew this was just the spark. Deeper shadows loomed, whispers of a system that preyed on the vulnerable, a web of neglect and corruption that had left Lily's family stranded. The road ahead promised not just miles, but a reckoning, one promise at a time. The rumble of 30 Harleys carved through the twilight like a vow etched in thunder, the convoy slicing along the winding backroads toward the trailer park Lily had described. Ethan felt the girl's small hands clutching tighter around his midsection, her cheek pressed against the worn leather of his jacket, warm breaths syncing with the steady pulse of the engine. The air whipped past, carrying the sharp tang of pine from the encroaching woods and the faint, acrid bite of exhaust, a reminder that this ride was no longer about escape, but confrontation. Behind him, the Iron Vipers rode in flawless formation, Jax at his right flank, the others fanned out like guardians from a forgotten legend. No one spoke. The road itself seemed to whisper the weight of what they'd begun, a simple wave unraveling into something unbreakable. Lily's voice cut through the wind occasionally, soft questions about the bikes, the stars beginning to prick the indigo sky. "Do they ever get tired?" she'd asked earlier, her wonder piercing Ethan's guarded silence. He'd glanced back, catching her wide eyes reflecting the taillights, and murmured, "Not when they've got a reason to keep going." It was more truth than he'd intended, stirring memories of dusty patrols under foreign suns, where promises made in the dead of night had kept him alive. His brother, Marcus, had clasped his shoulder once, under a sky no different from this one, and said, "We ride for the ones who can't, Ghost, that's the oath." Marcus was gone now, claimed by sands Ethan still dreamed of. But the dog tag around his neck burned like a fresh brand, pulling him toward this fragile mission. As the trailer park came into view, the glow of sodium lamps flickered like hesitant fireflies against the encroaching dark. It was a patchwork of rusted metal and sagging roofs, trailers huddled together in the shadow of overgrown weeds. The air thick with the musty scent of damp earth and distant rain. Poverty clung here like morning fog, invisible chains that held families in place while the world sped by. Ethan signaled the slowdown, the convoy easing to a halt in a gravel lot that crunched under tires like brittle bones. Lily slid off the bike first, her bare feet tentative on the cool ground, pointing toward a faded blue trailer at the edge, its door ajar like an unspoken invitation or warning. "She's in there," Lily said, her voice small but steady, leading the way with a mix of relief and fear. The Vipers dismounted in unison, a wall of quiet strength, their boots silent on the dirt as they followed. Jax carried the lemonade stand's remnants in a saddlebag, a makeshift offering, while others scanned the surroundings with the instincts of men who'd learned to trust shadows. Inside, the trailer was dim, lit by a single bulb swinging from a frayed cord, casting elongated shapes across peeling wallpaper. The air was stale, laced with the faint medicinal bitterness of pills and worry. On a threadbare couch sat Lily's mother, Elena, a woman in her late 30s, whose once vibrant eyes were dulled by exhaustion and pain. She looked up as they entered, her frail form wrapped in a quilt that had seen better days, surprise etching lines deeper into her face. "Who?" Eleanor started, her voice a rasp, but Lily rushed forward, words tumbling out. "Mom, these are the bikers. They stopped. They're helping." Ethan's crew filled the space without crowding, respectful giants in a world too small for their resolve. He stepped closer, removing his helmet to reveal the silver streaks in his dark hair, the scars that told stories he rarely shared. "Name's Ethan Harlan. Your girl's got spirit waving us down like that. Said you need meds we can help with." Elena's gaze flickered between them, suspicion warring with desperation. She explained in halting sentences, the words heavy with the burden of months, the illness that had crept in like a thief, the bills piling like storm clouds, the local clinic that promised aid but delivered only forms and delays. "They say we're not priority," she whispered, glancing at a stack of denied claims on the coffee table. Yellowed papers stamped with bureaucratic indifference. "Something about funding cuts, but I hear whispers, kickbacks, favors to the big donors uptown." The room fell quiet, the tick of a cheap clock amplifying the tension. Jax knelt by the table, examining the papers with a frown, his massive hands gentle as he sifted through them. "This ain't right," he growled low, the injustice igniting a familiar fire in the group. Ethan nodded, feeling the old oath stir deeper now, not just a memory, but a call to action. He'd seen this rot before, in war-torn villages where aid trucks vanished into corrupt hands, leaving the innocent to fade. "We're getting you to a real doctor," he said firmly, his tone brooking no argument. "No more waiting on their games." Dim, the Vipers mobilized seamlessly. One called a contact at a free clinic 2 towns over, another rummaged through packs for immediate supplies, bandages, pain relievers from their road kits. Lily watched, awe blooming on her face as these strangers became allies, her small hand slipping into Ethan's, a silent bond forming in the lamplight. But as they prepared to move Elena, a distant siren wailed, cutting through the night like a warning shot. Headlights pierced the trailer windows, casting erratic beams across the walls. Jax peered out, his expression hardening. "Cops," he muttered. "Patrol car coming this way. Looks official." Elena paled, clutching the quilt tighter. "They've been watching us, said we'd get help if we stayed quiet, but nothing comes." Ethan's jaw set, the dog tag cool against his skin. This wasn't coincidence. It was the first thread of a larger tangle, the kind where small pleas got tangled in webs of power. The Vipers exchanged glances, hands hovering near hidden holsters, not for fight, but readiness. The siren grew louder, the promise of the road now shadowed by forces that preyed on the weak. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder, his voice a steady anchor. "We ride together now. No turning back." Outside, the patrol car pulled up, its lights bathing the convoy in red and blue pulses, a stark contrast to the unity of the bike's standing sentinel. The officer stepped out, badge glinting under the lamps, his posture all authority and veiled threat. "Evening, folks. What's all this?" he called, eyes narrowing at the leather-clad group. Ethan stepped forward, the weight of 30 brothers at his back, ready to face whatever reckoning the night demanded. The wave that had started it all was rippling outward, pulling them into a storm where loyalty would be tested and justice carved from the unyielding blacktop. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The patrol car's lights pulsed like a heartbeat gone wrong, washing the trailer park in erratic crimson and sapphire, turning the rusted trailers into silhouettes of forgotten dreams. Ethan stood his ground, the gravel shifting under his boots as he faced the officer, a man named Harlan, coincidence or cruel joke, with a mustache trimmed sharp and eyes that scanned the group like he was tallying threats. Behind Ethan, the iron vipers formed a loose semicircle, not aggressive but unyielding, their shadows merging with the night, leather creaking softly in the cooling air. The scent of hot metal from the bikes mingled with the earthy dampness rising from the ground, a prelude to the storm brewing in more ways than one. "Officer," Ethan said, his voice level, carrying the gravelly timbre of roads travelled too long. He kept his hands visible, palms open, the dog tag tucked safely under his shirt, but its weight a constant reminder. "Just helping out a family in need. Girl flagged us down on the highway, said her mum's sick. We're getting her to a clinic." Lily peeked from behind Elena's quilt-wrapped form in the doorway, her small face pale but defiant, fingers twisting the fabric as if anchoring herself to this newfound shield. The officer, Deputy Harlan, his badge red, stepped closer, his flashlight beam sweeping over the convoy, lingering on the saddlebags and the faint glint of tools that could pass for weapons in the wrong light. "Helping, huh? This ain't a charity run, Harlan." He smirked at the shared name, but there was no warmth in it, only the cold edge of someone who'd long ago traded duty for convenience. "We've got reports of disturbances out here, folks stirring up trouble over medical bills. You bikers best move along before this turns into something official." His gaze flicked to Elena, who leaned against the doorframe, her breathing shallow, the quilt slipping to reveal arms bruised by IV marks and the invisible crush of neglect. Jax shifted beside Ethan, his bulk a quiet warning, but he held back, fists unclenched. The Vipers had seen enough badges twisted by backroom deals in their time. Vets turned away from VA lines, brothers lost to red tape that choked slower than any enemy fire. "Disturbances?" Jax rumbled, his voice low like thunder rolling distant hills. "Lady here's been waiting months for help that never comes. You calling that peace?" The deputy's jaw tightened, and he adjusted his belt, the radio on his shoulder crackling faintly with static, as if the night itself was listening. Elena cleared her throat, stepping forward with Lily's help, her voice fragile but laced with the steel of survival. "It's true, officer. The clinic in town, they keep saying paperwork's delayed, but I know better. My neighbor saw the director's car at the mayor's place. Fancy dinners while we scrape for pills." Her words hung in the humid air, simple truths that exposed the rot beneath the surface. The deputy's eyes darted, a flicker of unease betraying the facade. Ethan caught it. The same tell he'd read in interrogations overseas, guilt masked as authority. This wasn't just oversight, it was a system rigged to let the vulnerable slip through, funds siphoned to those who rode in air-conditioned offices, not battered pickups. The tension coiled tighter, the siren's wail fading to a low hum that mirrored the unease settling over the group. One of the Vipers, a wiry vet named Tyler, with a prosthetic leg hidden under his jeans, pulled out his phone, already dialing the free clinic contact. "Ambulance en route," he announced quietly to Ethan, his voice steady. "They'll meet us halfway, no waiting on local games." But the deputy wasn't done. He radioed in, his tone clipped, requesting backup as if 30 men on bikes were an invading force. Headlights appeared in the distance, another car approaching slow, its grille like a predator's grin in the dark. Ethan's mind raced, not with fear, but resolve, the old promise surging like fuel through his veins. He'd sworn to Marcus under that foreign sky, protect the innocent, stand when others turned away. Lily's wave had reignited it, turning strangers into kin, and now this, cops circling like vultures over the weak. "We're not here to cause trouble," he told the deputy, stepping just close enough to meet his gaze without challenge. "But we're not leaving her to rot either. You want to stop us, you'll have to explain why a mother's pain gets paperwork while donors get favors." The words landed soft but sharp, a moral jab that made the officer hesitate, his hand twitching toward his holster before falling away. Elena swayed slightly, and Lily steadied her, the girl's eyes locking onto Ethan's with a trust that pierced deeper than any bullet. "Please," she whispered, not to the deputy, but to the group, her voice a thread pulling them all tighter. The Vipers moved then, fluid as a well-oiled machine. Two helped Elena toward a bike rigged with a sidecar from Jax's custom rig, padding it with jackets for comfort. Others formed a buffer, polite but firm, blocking the deputy's path without a word. The air thickened with the scent of impending rain, distant thunder rumbling like approval from the gods of the road. As the second patrol car pulled up, its doors creaking open to reveal a partner with a notepad and skepticism etched on his face, Ethan mounted his bike, Lily clambering up behind him once more. Eleanor was secured, her frail hand waving weakly in gratitude, the quilt a banner of fragile hope. "Ride out steady," Ethan called to his crew, engines igniting in a chorus that drowned the siren's echo. They peeled away in formation, taillights streaking red through the night, leaving the deputies in a swirl of dust and unanswered questions. But Ethan knew this was no clean escape. The web was tightening, whispers of corruption hinting at deeper players, the clinic director, perhaps the mayor himself, guarding secrets that preyed on families like Elena's. Miles down the back road, the convoy reformed, the free clinic's lights a beacon on the horizon. Elena rested in the sidecar, her breathing easing with each bump, Lily's head on Ethan's back, a small weight that felt like purpose renewed. Jax rode parallel, his face grim under the moonlight. "That wasn't random," he said over the wind, voice cutting through the roar. "They'll follow. We just poked the bear." Ethan nodded, the dog tag warming against his chest. The ride had become a crusade, 30 souls bound by a child's plea, racing toward truth in a world that buried it under lies. Dawn was hours away, but the shadows of reckoning stretched long, promising trials that would test not just their loyalty, but the very honor that kept them riding. The moon rode high over the serpentine backroads, its pale light slicing through the canopy of ancient oaks that flanked the highway like silent sentinels. The Iron Viper's convoy cut a determined path, engines humming a low, resolute symphony that drowned out the faint patter of rain beginning to speckle the asphalt. Ethan led the pack, Lily's arms secure around his waist, her warmth a steady anchor against the chill seeping through his jacket. In the sidecar beside Jax, Eleanor lay propped on a makeshift bed of folded leathers and saddle blankets, her eyes half closed but alert, the rhythmic jostle of the bike lulling her into a fragile peace. The air carried the fresh, metallic tang of ozone, promising a downpour that mirrored the storm of resolve building within the group. Jax throttled back to match Ethan's pace, his voice rumbling over the wind like gravel under tires. "Clinic's just off the next exit, old place run by Doc Ramirez, no strings attached. He owes me from that flood run last year." Ethan nodded, his gaze fixed on the taillights ahead, each one a flickering oath in the night. The deputy's interference back at the trailer park lingered like exhaust fumes, a sour reminder that their simple act of aid had stirred something foul. Whispers from Elena earlier about clinic directors pocketing funds meant for the needy, cozying up to town officials, painted a picture of rot Ethan recognized all too well. It was the same shadow that had haunted his post-war days, when promises of care for vets dissolved into paperwork and empty waiting rooms. As the exit loomed, marked by a weathered sign for Hope's Edge Free Clinic, the convoy slowed, tires hissing on wet gravel as they pulled into the dimly lit lot. The building was a squat, single-story affair, its white walls peeling under the assault of years and neglect, windows glowing with the soft yellow of fluorescent bulbs. A single ambulance sat idle by the entrance, its red cross a beacon in the drizzle. Tyler dismounted first, his prosthetic legs steady as he waved them in, already coordinating with a night shift nurse who'd stepped out, her scrubs rumpled from a long shift. "We've got a patient incoming, needs immediate care, no insurance hassles," he said into his phone, his tone brooking no delay. The Vipers moved with practiced efficiency, a brotherhood forged in tighter spots than this. Two riders lifted Elena gently from the sidecar, her quilt draped like a banner of endurance, while others formed a human corridor to shield her from the rain. Lily stayed glued to Ethan's side, her small hand in his, eyes wide at the sight of the clinic's doors swinging open. Inside, the air was cool and antiseptic, laced with the faint hum of monitors and the distant murmur of voices. Doc Ramirez emerged from a back hallway, a sturdy man in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and hands scarred from decades of pulling people back from the brink. His eyes, sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, took in the group without judgment. Bikers, a frail woman, a child, seeing only the human thread connecting them. "Elena Vargas?" he asked, voice warm but urgent, gesturing to an exam room. The Vipers eased her onto the bed, the paper crinkling under her weight like a whisper of normalcy. Lily hovered by the door, biting her lip as the doctor began his assessment, stethoscope cold against Elena's skin. Shortness of breath, fatigue, looks like chronic respiratory issues, possibly exacerbated by untreated infection, Ramirez murmured, his brow furrowing. "How long has this been going on?" Elena's response was a weary recounting of months of denial, the local clinic's endless deferrals, the stack of rejected forms that had driven her daughter to the roadside stand. The doctor's face darkened, not with surprise, but recognition. "I've heard the rumors," he said quietly, glancing at Ethan. "Funds vanishing into administrative costs, directors taking cuts from pharmaceutical reps. It's a plague here. Hits the poorest hardest." Ethan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, the dog tag pressing into his chest like a heartbeat. This was the heart of it. Not just one family's struggle, but a systemic betrayal, where oaths to heal were traded for lined pockets. He'd carried his own vow since Marcus's last breath, a promise to shield the defenseless from such indifference. Now it echoed in Lily's trusting gaze, in the quiet solidarity of his crew scattered through the waiting area, Jax poring over Elena's paperwork, Tyler fetching water, others standing watch outside against the rain-slicked night. The clinic felt like a fragile outpost, a place where loyalty could still tip the scales, but peace shattered with the screech of tires in the lot. Headlights flooded the windows, casting jagged shadows across the linoleum. "More trouble," Jax growled, peering out to see two squad cars pulling up, their lights off but presence unmistakable. The deputies from the trailer park, reinforced now, stepped out into the downpour, rain sheeting off their hats as they approached the entrance. One banged on the glass door, his voice muffled but insistent. "Open up! We need to speak to the patient and her escorts." Nurse Ramirez, the doctor's daughter it turned out, froze, her hand on the exam room door, while the elder Ramirez continued his work undeterred, injecting a mild sedative to ease Elena's discomfort. Ethan's pulse quickened, not with panic, but the steady burn of purpose. He signaled the Vipers subtly, "Stay calm, hold the line." Stepping outside, he met the deputies under the awning, rain drumming on the metal roof like impatient fingers. "She's getting the care she needs," he stated, voice even, water dripping from his jacket. "No laws broken here." The lead deputy, the one called Harlan, sneered, water beading on his moustache. "Vagrancy laws, obstruction, picking up strays without clearance. This clinic's under county oversight, and we're here to ensure compliance." His partner nodded, notepad out, but his eyes darted nervously, as if the weight of 30 bikes idling nearby pressed on him. The standoff stretched, tension coiling like the storm overhead. Inside, Ramirez called out, "She's stable, needs antibiotics and follow-up, but she'll pull through with rest." Lily slipped out to Ethan's side, her presence a quiet defiance, whispering, "They're good people, right?" Ethan knelt, rain-matted hair framing his face, and nodded. "The best kind. We keep promises, kid." The deputies conferred, radios crackling with what sounded like higher orders, perhaps a call from the clinic director. Pulling strings to quash the exposure, but the Vipers didn't budge, their engines a low rumble of unity, turning the lot into hallowed ground. Finally, the deputies retreated to their cars, engines coughing to life in the downpour, taillights fading into the sheets of rain. It was a temporary reprieve, Ethan knew. The corruption's tendrils reached deeper, toward the mayor's office and beyond, where decisions were made over steak dinners, while families like Elena's faded. Back inside, Elena slept soundly for the first time in weeks. Lily curled beside her, the lemonade jar placed on a side table like a talisman. Jax clapped Ethan's shoulder, the gesture heavy with unspoken brotherhood. "We ride at first light, escort them home, make sure the locals back off." Ethan agreed, the night settling into watchful quiet, the storm outside mirroring the one within. A crusade ignited by a child's wave, binding them in loyalty's unyielding chain. Dawn would bring new roads, new tests of honor. But for now, in this clinic's glow, redemption felt within reach. One quiet victory at a time. If that moment of unity hits you right in the gut, smash that like button. It fuels these rides and gets the story out to more lost souls on the highway. The first hints of dawn crept over the horizon like a hesitant ally, painting the clinic's parking lot in muted greys and golds, the rain-slicked asphalt reflecting the fading stars. Ethan stood by his bike, wiping condensation from the handlebars with a rag that smelled of oil and old leather, his breath visible in the crisp morning air. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clean, earthy scent that mingled with the faint antiseptic waft from the open clinic door. Inside, Eleanor rested in a borrowed room, her color returning under the steady drip of an IV, while Lily dozed in a chair beside her, the lemonade jar clutched like a lucky charm. The Iron Vipers had taken shifts through the night, some catching power naps on benches, others keeping watch, their engines silent but ready, a low vibration humming in the quiet like an unspoken vow. Jax approached, his boots scraping softly on the gravel, a thermos of black coffee steaming in his massive hand. "Doc says she'll be good to travel by noon, antibiotics kicking in, no complications." He passed the thermos, the hot liquid burning Ethan's palm through the metal, grounding him in the moment. Ethan took a swig, the bitterness cutting through the fatigue that tugged at his bones. Memories flickered unbidden, Marcus's face in the pre-dawn glow of a desert outpost, sharing a similar brew before a patrol that changed everything. "We stand for them," his brother had said, glapping Ethan's shoulder, the dog tag swinging between them like a pact sealed in sweat and sand. That promise had carried Ethan through the years, a quiet fire against the cold indifference of the world. Now it burned brighter, fueled by Lily's trusting gaze and the injustice they'd uncovered. A clinic director skimming funds, deputies turning blind eyes for favors. The group stirred as the sun breached the tree line, casting long shadows that danced across the lot. Tyler emerged from the clinic, his prosthetic leg clicking faintly as he adjusted it, a nod to Ethan confirming the all clear. "Nurse packed meds for a week, enough to bridge till we sort the rest." The Vipers mounted up in a ripple of motion, leathers creaking, keys turning with a chorus of clicks that echoed like waking giants. Elena was helped outside, moving with tentative steps, her quilt folded neatly over one arm, Lily skipping ahead to reclaim her spot behind Ethan. "Ready for the ride home?" he asked the girl, his voice rough from the sleepless night. She nodded vigorously, her tangled hair catching the light, a smile breaking through the remnants of worry. "With you guys?" "Yeah." The convoy rolled out smooth and steady, 30 bikes forming a protective phalanx along the winding county road, dust kicking up in lazy plumes behind them. The air warmed as they rode, carrying the sweet bloom of wildflowers from roadside ditches and the distant tang of wood smoke from unseen chimneys. Elena rode in Jax's sidecar, propped comfortably, her hand occasionally waving to acknowledge the riders flanking her, a silent thanks that bound them tighter. Ethan felt the road's rhythm pulse through him, each mile a step toward closure, but doubt gnawed at the edges. The deputy's retreat last night had been too easy, their radios buzzing with calls that hinted at bigger hands pulling strings. Whispers from Doc Ramirez replayed in his mind. The director, Victor Lang, a slick operator who'd funneled aid money into personal accounts, buying silence from local law with golf outings and envelopes under tables. As the trailer park came into view, the morning sun glinting off its rusted roofs like false hope, Ethan signaled a cautious slowdown. The place looked unchanged, trailers hunkered in the weeds, a stray dog barking from the shadows, but an undercurrent of tension hung in the air, thick as the humidity rising from the dew-kissed ground. They pulled into the lot, engines cutting off one by one, the sudden silence amplifying the crunch of gravel under boots. Lily hopped down, racing to the door with a cry of, "Mum's home!" But Elena paused, her face paling as she scanned the surroundings. "Something's off," she murmured, clutching Jax's arm. "The neighbor's car. It's gone. She never leaves early." Before Ethan could respond, a sleek black SUV crested the rise, its tinted windows opaque against the light, tires humming with purposeful menace. It pulled up, blocking the entrance. Doors opening to reveal 3 men in crisp suits, not deputies, but the kind of authority that wore silk ties instead of badges. The lead, a tall figure with a polished smile that didn't reach his eyes, stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Harlan, I presume. Victor Lang, County Health Director. We've been expecting you." His voice was smooth, like oil on water, but the flicker in his gaze betrayed calculation. Behind him, 2 enforcers loomed, their builds suggesting more than paperwork expertise, hands resting casually near concealed bulges. The Vipers tensed, a subtle shift, hands on handlebars, feet planted wide. But Ethan raised a palm, holding them steady. The dog tag warmed against his skin, Marcus's words echoing, "Protect without breaking." "Expecting us?" Ethan echoed, dismounting slowly, positioning himself between the suits and Elena. "Funny, since you left this family twisting in the wind." Lang's smile tightened, glancing at the paperwork. "Misunderstandings all. Funding reallocation, standard procedure. But your intervention last night raised flags. Vigilantism isn't how we handle things here." He nodded to one enforcer who produced a document, the paper crisp and official, stamped with seals that screamed legitimacy. "Eviction notice for this property, health code violations, and a cease and desist for unauthorized transport of a patient. Sign, and we can discuss aid quietly." Elena's breath hitched, Lily freezing mid-step, the girl's eyes wide with the dawning fear of loss. Jax growled low, stepping up, but Ethan shot him a look. Patience for now. This was the web's heart, not fists, but forms and fines, designed to crush without a trace. "Aid?" Ethan said, voice laced with quiet steel. "Like the kind that vanished into your pockets? We talked to Doc Ramirez. He knows the numbers don't add up." Lang's composure cracked, a vein pulsing at his temple, the morning breeze carrying the faint cologne of expensive denial. The enforcers shifted, rain from the night still pooling in the lot, reflecting their distorted forms. The standoff stretched, the sun climbing higher, baking the tension into the air. Lily tugged Ethan's sleeve, whispering, "They can't take our home, can they?" He knelt, meeting her eyes, the weight of his promise settling like an anchor. "Not while we're here, kid. Oaths aren't paper, they're road." The Vipers closed ranks subtly, a wall of leather and resolve, engines idling now with a warning rumble. Lang conferred with his men, phone to ear, voice low and urgent, likely calling for backup or worse, spinning the narrative to paint the bikers as threats. Elena straightened, her voice gaining strength. "I've got proof, emails, receipts from a neighbor. You take this place, it all comes out." Lang's face hardened, the clipboard lowering like a shield. Bluff all you want, but interference has consequences. He turned back to the SUV, signaling retreat, but not before a parting shot. Watch your backs on the ride out. Roads get slippery around here. The vehicle peeled away, dust swirling in its wake, leaving the group in a hush broken only by the distant call of a crow. Ethan exhaled, the encounter a spark to the fire. This wasn't over. It was escalation, the corruption baring teeth. Jax clapped his back, the gesture solid. We dig deeper, call in favors, get a lawyer from the rally contacts. The Vipers nodded, purpose reigniting, as they helped Elena inside, securing the trailer against the invisible siege. By midday, with the home safe for now, the convoy prepared to scatter, but bonds lingered, phones exchanged, watches set. Lily hugged Ethan fiercely, her small voice muffled against his jacket. You came back like you promised. He ruffled her hair, the dog tag glinting as he mounted up. Always for the ones who wave. Engines roared to life, the group riding out in formation, the road ahead curving toward unseen battles. The wave that started it all had rippled into a tide, washing against walls of power, testing loyalties in the unforgiving light of day. Redemption wasn't a destination, Ethan knew. It was the ride itself, one turn at a time, with 30 brothers at his side. The midday sun beat down on the trailer park like a relentless judge, turning the air into a shimmering haze that blurred the line between heat and haze of unresolved tension. Ethan throttled his Harley steady as the convoy wound back toward the highway, the growl of engines a defiant anthem against the morning's confrontation. Lily rode pillion behind him, her small frame pressed close, the wind tugging at her sundress like whispers of freedom. The scent of sun-baked earth and wild sage filled his nostrils, mingling with the familiar leather and oil of his jacket, a sensory anchor in the swirl of what lay ahead. Behind them, the Iron Vipers stretched out in a protective line, Jax leading the flank with Elena secure in his sidecar, her face turned toward the passing landscape, a faint smile breaking through the weariness. Ethan's mind churned like the miles unspooling beneath his tires. Victor Lang's parting threat echoed, "Roads get slippery," a veiled promise of sabotage that stirred the ghosts of old battles. Marcus's dog tag swayed against his chest, cool metal warmed by the sun, reminding him that oaths weren't forged in safety, but in the grind of standing firm. This ride had started with a child's desperate wave, pulling 30 hardened souls into a fray against a system that devoured the vulnerable. Now, as the blacktop curved toward the rally grounds up north, Ethan knew the true test wasn't miles, but the moral crossroads waiting at the end. Expose the corruption without shattering the fragile winds they'd claimed. The group pulled over at a roadside diner off Route 17, the same stretch where Lily's lemonade stand had stood hours earlier, now just a ghost of scattered cups and faded chalk. The parking lot was cracked and sun-bleached, gravel crunching under boots as they dismounted. Jax helped Elena to a shaded bench, her steps surer with the meds coursing through her veins, while Tyler fired up a laptop on a picnic table, pulling up contacts from the Brotherhood's network. "Got a lawyer buddy from the Vets Alliance," he said, fingers flying over keys, the screen's glow casting sharp angles on his scarred face. "She'll tear into Lang's books. Anonymous tip from Ramirez seals it." Lily scampered to the diner's edge, peering at the highway where cars blurred by, oblivious her voice piping up, "Think they'll fix it, so no one else has to sell lemonade alone?" Ethan knelt beside her, the rough wood of the bench grounding him, and met her eyes, clear now, unclouded by defeat. "They will, kid, because we make them. Promises like that don't fade." It was the core of it, the quiet power that had bound the Vipers since their founding. Not vengeance, but unyielding honor, the kind that outlasted badges and briefcases. Elena watched from her seat, her hand on Lily's shoulder, gratitude etching soft lines around her eyes. "You gave us more than a ride," she said softly to the group, her voice carrying over the distant hum of traffic. "A family when ours was fraying." Words spread through the crew like exhaust trails, texts pinging, low murmurs of plans taking shape. Jax coordinated a shadow detail. Half the Vipers would peel off to tail any tails from Lang's crew, while others rode escort for Elena and Lily back to the trailer, ensuring the eviction threat dissolved under legal fire. The air hummed with purpose, the clink of coffee mugs and the sizzle of burgers from the diner adding a mundane rhythm to their resolve. Ethan felt the weight lift slightly, the road's vastness offering perspective. One wave had ignited this, but 30 hearts kept it burning, a chosen kin forged in the crucible of compassion. As the sun dipped toward afternoon, casting golden halos around the bikes, a call came through on Jax's phone, crisp and triumphant. The lawyer had moved fast. Preliminary audits uncovered discrepancies. Lang's name tied to diverted funds through shell accounts. "He's sweating," she reported, her voice tinny over the speaker. "County auditors involved now. No more quiet threats. Elena's claims get fast-tracked. Full coverage retroactive." Cheers rippled through the group, subdued but deep, fists bumping in the shadow of the diner sign flickering to life. Lily jumped, hugging Ethan around the neck, her laughter a bright counterpoint to the day's grit. Elena rose, embracing Jax with tears unshed, the quilt from the clinic draped over her shoulders like a medal of survival. But Ethan knew closure wasn't a full stop. It was a bend in the road. Lang might fall, deputies reassigned, but the rot ran deeper, echoes of the wars where aid meant power plays, where innocence paid the price. He gathered the Vipers in a loose circle, the sun warming their backs, the horizon stretching endless. "This started with a wave," he said, voice steady as the idling engines. "It ends with us riding on, for the next one. The next stand, that's the oath." Nods passed like silent toasts, eyes meeting in the bond of brothers who'd chosen loyalty over isolation, redemption over regret. They mounted up one last time, the convoy roaring back onto the highway, taillights winking like stars aligning. Lily waved from Jax's sidecar now, her small hand a beacon of hope reclaimed, Elena beside her, breathing free. Ethan led, wind whipping his face, the dog tags steady against his heart. Miles blurred into legacy, the simple act of turning around, rippling into justice's tide. In a world of cynics, 30 bikers proved that promises endured, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet thunder of showing up. The road called onward, but for this moment, the wave had won, binding them in unbreakable light. Thank you for riding this journey with us. Your support keeps these stories alive. If it touched you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's keep the promises rolling together.